following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to another edition of Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard here, and I represent District 12. I live here in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we are continuing the topic of Narcan. The last episode that we had a few people from that were in recovery, and today I wanted to introduce you to Chief John Drury, Farmington, who happens to sit on the committee that we basically just finished this past week. And Chief, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, we're going to talk about your beard first. You got a beard. What's going on with the beard?
During the month of November, I allow my officers and myself to grow a beard. And for a donation to our food pantry that we have in Farmington, the officers get to grow a beard for the month of November.
Well, I noticed it the other day. I'm thinking, what's going on here? I didn't want to be, impolite, but yeah, whatever.
It's very unusual in law enforcement, but we've been doing it for 4 years, and we've been able to raise $200 or $300 usually at a time, and that money goes a long way during the holiday season. Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Farmington's a little over an hour drive, hour and 20 minutes, and we know that's a long drive, and we appreciate you coming tonight. You're appointed to the Narcan committee by Senator Chuck Morrison, or by the Chiefs of Police?
That's correct. The president of the Chiefs of Police Association, I've known for pretty much my whole career. And he was aware of the problems that we've had in the town of Farmington. And Chief Drury thought I'd be a good fit for the commission. And we've had unfortunately, a lot of experience in Stratford County and in the town of Farmington with this epidemic.
Yeah, well, being here in Nashua with our population, your population's about 8,000 people.
That's correct.
You wouldn't think that there would be an opiate problem in such a small town, but way up north, but that's not the case.
It's very true, and it's really hitting this state hard. And it's something that I have learned that we have to stay on top of all the time. We have done all kinds of events in the town, from pancake breakfasts with Narcan to Narcan in the park, where we want to educate the population and our citizens as to what's happening, and we want to make Narcan available for them. And through Avis Goodwin Center that's in Somersworth, and a lot of other groups, as well as some state-funded, that we have been able to provide over at this point 100 kits of Narcan to family. We've been able to train them how to use it and just make it available for them.
They made it a lot easier now with the kits before that you had to put everything together, and now it's just you can just do the spray thing apparently.
That's correct. Yeah. It's almost like a nasal spray. It's much easier to use than the older kits. And what we're hoping to be able to do, like I say, is to keep the education going. This problem, unfortunately, isn't going to go away by itself. And I think if we can keep people on board and keep this topic in the spotlight, we can get people to help. It's not fair to someone makes one mistake in their life, and we want to help them recover out of that error that they made.
You were sharing something in committee just the other day. We wrapped up the committee. It went very well, by the way, as far as for our preliminary report. You were very instrumental, and just about everybody on there was very instrumental in helping with the study of Narcan. You were talking about a story where a mother drove by the police station.
Just about 9 days ago, a mother noticed her son in distress. She came to our police station. One of our officers that has been trained in Narcan, he is also an EMT, realized the distress that this young person was in and administered Narcan to him, as well as calling for the ambulance, and saved his life. And
that's kind of unusual for them to just go to the police station and say, look, my son is overdosing or my daughter's overdosing.
Well, it's one of the things, in really keeping with community policing, we've done, a lot of community events. The public has to know that the police are on their side. We want to help. When I have an officer brand new officer, one of the first oral board questions we ask is, why do you want to be a cop? 95% of the time, the answer is to help people.
Yeah.
And this is one of the ways. So by getting our officers out there statewide, in the local communities and everywhere, and making sure that our officers are approachable, that anybody can ask us any question. And if we don't know, we won't know all the answers, but we'll find out the answer for you and provide you with the services that we can. Unfortunately, sometimes those services are going to be a pair of handcuffs.
Well, we had some those gentlemen that came into the committee. One of them he said, look, I need help, and he actually claimed that he was going to commit suicide, and that was the only way he could get medical attention. So some people are at a point where they're saying, yeah, I need help.
Yes.
Yeah, and this, they have to go to extremes to get it, it seems, and we definitely have to work on that. One of the things that was brought out in testimony, and you find people that, that they'll make a call, and they'll be calling from one place, and they're found in another place, and they're all wet. And because of fear. Somebody's calling for help, something went bad, somebody overdosed, they don't want to get arrested. But we did talk about that in the committee.
Yeah, and it's very important for people to know that if you call 911, if you are overdosing or someone in the house is overdosing as well, you call 911, you will not be prosecuted. We are here to provide the service, to get you help. We're not going to leave the stuff lying around. We will seize it.
Right.
But you will not be prosecuted as long as you call and get emergency services started for the person that's in distress.
And one of the other things, we were talking how that, days and years ago when somebody was drinking too much, in order to sober them up, they would put them in the shower and get them all wet. And that seems to have followed through, where people think, well, you're overdosing, I'm going to throw some water on this person. That's really not going to help.
That's correct. It doesn't. You've got to get EMS started. You want to get that Narcan administered as quickly as you can. The heroin attaches itself to the receptors in the brain, and it starts to slow down the bodily functions of breathing, of heart rate, and all of that. And the Narcan kicks the opioid off of the receptors, gets things going again. And you want to get EMS started because you don't want the fact that the Narcan can wear off and the heroin that's in the body or
is still there,
and other things can come back on.
Right. And
the person can actually re-overdose a short time later. So that's why it's very important just to get EMS started.
And just for our viewers, I know that for those that didn't see the previous show, we had people that were on recovery that came in and they sat and they talked about Narcan. Narcan is something that is it's something that gets you into an immediate, not recovery, but an immediate
withdrawal, basically.
And there's a myth that well, if we provide this Narcan, they're just going to know that they can overdose and then administer this Narcan to them. That's really not the case, is it?
And what my hope is that we're giving somebody a second chance.
Right.
You're giving them a second chance at life. And unfortunately, it may take a third chance or a
Right.
fourth chance, but you're getting them you're kind of putting them in the spotlight.
Right.
And it may be that time, that epiphany that they have, that this is when I need to wake up and seek help and become the person that I wanted to be when I was 8 and 9 years old.
Right.
You know, people stray down the wrong path. It happens. You know, we want to get them so that they're back on and their families will be proud of them, and more importantly, that they'll be proud of themselves.
Right. Yep.
You know, we all make mistakes, and let's not hold it against someone for the rest of their lives.
And that's just it. It's that wave. That just keeps pounding on you, and eventually somebody's got to help you lift up. That otherwise you're going to perish. But some people are thinking, well, you know, if we provide that, they're going to go back. Well, that may be the case, but that little light bulb does go off at times. And I guess one of the other things we brought up in committee was the fact that heroin isn't necessarily as predominant as now the fentanyl.
That's correct. It's some of the additives that they're putting into this stuff. You don't know what you're putting in your body. And
at what dose and
exactly,
what it can do.
I can give you an unfortunate example that we had. You know, a poor person had suffered from heroin addiction. They did time in prison. They got out of prison, and unfortunately, it was one time, relapsed. And my belief is that the dose that they took was probably the same dose that they took 6 months ago, but now it was 100 times stronger than it was, and unfortunately, this person passed away.
Yes, yeah.
And you know, we you know, in my town, we've been fortunate. Our numbers have come down, but you know, in a small town of 7,000 people, everyone knows everyone.
Right.
So this really.
And you lost 14 people last year? Or?
Yeah, and we've lost 4 this year. Now those numbers are much better, but 4 is still 4 too many.
Right.
I say we're making progress, and you know, we've really tried to keep our finger on the pulse of this problem by having community forums, making Narcan as accessible as we can, both, you know, Stratford County-wide as well as Farmington as well as the state. And I think until we get over this hurdle, we have to keep down that road, which is why the Narcan Commission was so important, and so important to me.
I was telling you off air that I did a ride-along with, I think, Officer Chris Finn. And he took me in Manchester. And, of course, before we were able to go out, they do their debriefing of what happened the night before. They put on the bulletproof vest and everything like that. It was very real at that point, that you're actually going into a hostile, potentially hostile situation. But in the debriefing, they were talking about one overdose that was recovered, and then one person needed 7 doses of Narcan to revive that person. And so everybody's thinking, well, that's probably because of the fentanyl. But again, somebody's promising you something, and it's not necessarily, there's no truth on labeling, right?
That's correct.
So it's a luck of the draw or whatever at that point. But that in itself, 7 doses. Who has 7 doses around?
My department doesn't. We first started off by getting Narcan I got a $400 donation. It was anonymous, and I'd love to know who did it, because that $400 donation last week saved somebody's life.
Wow.
That's how we got our first doses of Narcan, was actually buying them.
Mm-hmm.
And now we get them provided with us through, we've linked up with our EMS services, and that's how I got certified to administer Narcan.
What is that process like?
It's actually very easy. My agency does first aid training anyway. We go through CPR. We go through all of the first aid training. And then you're trained in how to give Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the New Hampshire Fire Academy, you go online, you take a test. It's probably takes an hour. And then once you've passed that test, you get your certificate, and you're all set to be able to administer Narcan.
So we learned that the state actually got a grant from the feds, I guess, and we picked up thousands of kits, and they're distributed throughout the state. But some people have to actually go out and purchase it, or if you want your own private kit. Is that how that works?
Yeah, the most of the pharmacies have standing orders where you can go in and you'll be able to purchase Narcan. I know most Rite Aids. I believe some of the other pharmacies in the state do it as well. It's my understanding that you have to get it from the pharmacist, and there's at least a little bit of a briefing as to how to use it.
Right. But there's no tracking of who has it or anything of that nature?
That's correct. No one knows who buys it.
Right.
And
we voted on that, actually, because part of our study was to determine whether we should track the people that have it or not. And if that were the case, then that would probably discourage people from having a kit on site. And, you never know when you need one. I hope I never have to have one, but you never know when you run into somebody, if that's what's going on. But if you know that somebody's using, you can go and purchase it, and nobody from the government's going to come and track you for it.
That's correct.
Yeah. And one of the misnomers also was, again, I kind of want to harp on this a little bit, but just because you have it available for people doesn't encourage them to continue using. It gets to a point, from testimony that we heard, at least this is my understanding, that after a while you're not doing it to get high, you're doing it not to get sick.
Correct. It's almost a survival.
Right.
The withdrawal symptoms are so rough that you're almost being forced into just maintaining so you can maintain your life.
Right.
The withdrawal symptoms, from what I understand, are very severe, very horrible, and it just becomes your body almost goes into a survival mode where the addiction is taking over.
And the Narcan basically is instant, like we said, it was instant.
Instant withdrawal.
Instant withdrawals, and it's not pleasant.
That's correct. Some people, when we administered Narcan, and I've seen this firsthand, they come up swinging. They're not very happy, and it's that fight or flight reflex. And if they're lying on the ground, the only thing they can do is move their arms. So it does become that
an issue. Yeah. So we learned that now. Funding, of course, is going to be an issue up the road if the feds stop, doing this. But as far as your experience on the committee and what we've learned, did you think it was helpful?
Oh, definitely. I thought the people that came in to speak, they spoke from the heart, and it's something that at least in the short term, and short term probably being relative of a few years, I think we have to keep going with it. I've just seen, I had a mother, excuse me, she overdosed, and she was given Narcan. Her daughter was in the house. We were able to make arrangements for the daughter to be taken by another family member. She got clean. She actually came back a few days later to my agency and actually spoke with the officer that helped her. It was EMS that had given her Narcan at this time. Spoke with me and thanked us for saving her life and for understanding. And we were able to, through Department of Children, Youth, and Families, be able to reunite them when they were ready. And
that's important. I mean, a lot of people are worried, that if they get help, also that they'll lose their children. And the goal is to keep families together.
That's it. And we want people to realize that this is a hurdle and it's going to be a tough one.
Right.
But you're definitely worth it.
This whole thing can happen to anybody. I mean, I've have a friend. He been sober for about 24 years. He's gone to AA, very faithful at doing that. And he had a blood clot in his leg. So they gave him some painkillers. That was it. It threw him off. I mean, he's just prone that way. And he went dark for maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And then he went back into recovery. And I only brought that up is because it's not necessarily coming through pot. It's not necessarily coming through a whole bunch of, it can come from anywhere.
That's correct.
In painkillers, it could be somebody experimenting, a bad thing happened in your life, and here, take one of these, and all of a sudden, your body says, I need more of that. And there's a choice somewhere. But after you've gone through that gate, you kind of need somebody to give you a map to come back. And this whole idea of Narcan, remember, it was a little controversial when it came to our committees, and people were worried about it, that it was just going to encourage people to use. Well, hello, New Hampshire, where this has been going on in all the other states, that they've been using Narcan for years. I just heard from Senator Reagan yesterday. Yeah, I was in EMS in Baltimore. Yeah, we've had this. I've saved I don't know how many lives with it. New Hampshire's kind of got to wake up. It's just that we haven't seen this type of epidemic. And now it's hitting us in the face, and all of a sudden, what's this Narcan thing? So
it's best described as that second chance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's projected this year that the state will lose 500 people to overdose deaths this year, and we lost 410 or so last year, which is it's unbelievable.
I was telling you earlier that and I brought this up to the committee, I think the other day as well, that it's election season, and I was knocking doors a couple of years ago, and a girl came out, just scratching her arm, and she said, "What are you going to do about the opiate crisis?" And I said, "I promise I'll do what I can as far as recovery." I think that's one of the biggest things that we need, is a place for people to go and get help, and to fund it. And we've had this fund, the liquor stores, they've got that 5% that's supposed to go to funding for recovery for alcohol and drug. I went to Senator Jeannie Forrester, and she made a promise that she was going to try to, put funding. And so we did. Knocking on the door this year, and just want to let her know I kept my promise. And she passed. And I just kind of standing there, kind of like numb. And so it's here. It's in front of us. It's our neighbors. It's a neighbor's neighbor. It's a relative.
It's affected everybody in our town, from from older teenagers up into their 60s. It knows no bounds, and it's just it's tough. And I've had to make way too many phone calls, and I've had to make way too many appearances on people's doorsteps, and have to tell somebody that their child has overdosed, and it sucks, to put it mildly. It's just tough. It rips your heart out every time you have to do it, and it's
Are churches in the communities getting more involved with this as well?
We've been very fortunate. We have 2 churches in our community. We had a group of people, Farmington Hopes, and they wanted to set up a group, and they needed a place to meet. Now, this is more for family members of people in recovery, but they also work with people that are trying to recover. And they reached out to me, and I was able to talk to 2 of our pastors in town. And we got them 2 locations. On Mondays they meet at one church, and then on Fridays they meet at the other one. And it at least gives people a place that, if they're ready at that time, these recovery coaches that are at these churches can now help them. We've actually, one of the pastors drove someone to the Manchester safe stations that their fire departments are running. And I know that has been very successful, and we've utilized it ourselves, and we're an hour away.
I know that listening to somebody, I don't know if it was in committee, but it would surprise some of the pastors out there, some of the priests, that somebody in your congregation, while they're attending church, may be stuck, may be bound, or one of their family members may be troubled, and because of the stigma, want to come forward. It's the wrong thing to do. You come forward, find help, and the pastors, I would encourage the churches to get more involved.
And I also, like I say, I encourage the police.
Yeah.
We're on the front lines of this. Our police, our EMS, our fire, we've got to be open. We've got to be approachable.
Yep.
If someone is crying out for help and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, try and find them help. We have recovery coaches in our town. They have a phone. We can call them 24 hours a day and get them, and try at least get them pointed in the right direction. Beds are still tough to get in the state of New Hampshire right now, but at least if it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning or noontime, you at least point someone in the right direction, get someone that can talk to them,
right.
and remove ourselves from it, so that people will become even more approachable to us. And like I say, we all go back to that first question I ever asked the new officers: is we're here to help,
right.
And want to.
And you guys are going through some tough 6 to 8 months, year and a half, 2 years lately, and it is important for the community to know that you guys are still here to help us.
Thank you.
We appreciate your service. We do. Before we end up closing out, before somebody has to call 911, there's a phone number. It's 211.
Correct.
I just learned about this the other day, and I'm embarrassed about it. But everybody said, "Oh yeah, 211." What's 211?
It's a state-run service that there are people on the phone to answer all kinds of questions and provide points of contact and point people in the right direction.
Specifically for this or for other things?
It's actually for all different types of topics. I haven't looked into it too much myself, but I know Anyone, Anytime, which is through the recovery services, the 211 service, and just to be able to point people in the right direction and get them the services, start the ball rolling, so to say.
Oh, we appreciate that. And Chief, one final question before I leave. If somebody wants to donate to that food pantry, how do they do that?
They can see any Farmington police officer. We'd be more than happy to.
You have a website?
We actually do. We have a Farmington Facebook page. We have a Farmington PD website. We'd be more than happy to provide some meals for our food pantry and citizens in town. We do a bunch of fundraisers through the town. We actually will probably will be a little later this month. We'll be working with Honeydew Donuts.
Okay.
And it's great to see cops serving donuts to people. But that's a great fundraiser also to help throughout the holiday season and actually provide services to our citizens. If someone has a house fire, we can find them a place to stay. We can get them a meal, things like that. So it's I have to say, it's a great community we have, and very tight-knit.
Thanks for coming to Nashua and this community.
My pleasure.
And we thank you for watching Speaking with the Senator. If you have any questions, give us a call. And until next week, thanks for watching.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.